Hey, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Connection Loop podcast. We're super excited to have today Josh Braun. Now, Josh is the founder of Braun Training, and he's all about showing sales pros how to not push, how to not try to convince. It's really about a different way that he has that's related to teaching that we're going to jump into in a minute. He has courses like the Badass Growth Guide and this is one of my favorites, Poke the Bear Cold Calling Method. So he's really changing some things here. And to quote Josh specifically, be the mint scoop in a sea full of bananas. Josh, sorry, I took your words there, but welcome in.
That was a really nice intro. Can you call me and do that every morning? That makes me feel so good. That's an amazing thing. Like that could be an app, like Attaboy.
Attaboy, up and at him. Here we go. That's perfect. Well, Josh, welcome in, my friend. So talk to the audience a little bit about you, your background, kind of where you got today. I liked your story, so let's let everyone else hear it.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, I fell into sales accidentally. I was a elementary school teacher teaching reading and technology to 5-year-olds, which is also selling, trying to sell the love of reading and writing to kids. And I'm working out in the gym one day and someone's talking about some ed tech startup. And I was intrigued by what they were talking about because it was education and technology. And one thing led to another, got me out of the classroom and started selling technology, even though I didn't know how to sell. Turns out, if you don't know how to sell, you're actually better at selling. That led into some teaching and selling gigs at some tech companies, and eventually started my own training company about 8 or 9 years ago.
How have you enjoyed the training part of it?
I really liked it because it combines two of the things that I'm most passionate about, which is teaching people, entertaining people, and helping them sell without convincing, pushing, or begging.
What is the number one difference between a 5-year-old and a 20-something-year-old professional salesperson?
There's a lot of similarities. I think what the thing that they have in common is that teaching is a separate skill. Mm-hmm. So just because you know a lot about sales or you've managed salespeople doesn't necessarily mean you can actually teach concepts in a way that are memorable and get people to care and lean in. Yeah. And so if you recognize that teaching is a separate skill, you can work on how do I teach now versus I have domain expertise.
That's a good point. All right, so let's jump into listening. So I think like if I was in front of the kids in the classroom, we always want them to listen, right? Pay attention, listen, right? And I think in sales, how long has it been around? It's almost a meme in terms of like the one call close, trying to convince, your brows furrowed, you're really moving in for the commission. Would you say commission breath? Like on your site, you talk about that. So talk about why listening can actually be the biggest superpower for somebody in terms of in a sales situation.
Yeah, I'll just give you a couple of different examples. So imagine that you went to a restaurant and you sat down and the server came over and said, "You're going to have the steak. It's amazing. Do you want it medium rare or well done?" You would think that person would be crazy unless you're like a meat eater, because you might be a vegan. Yeah. A lot of that happens in sales too, where salespeople will go into convince mode and explanation mode. And the problem with that is when you explain things before people feel understood, they won't trust what you recommended. So the example in the restaurant of the guy recommending the steak, I'm not going to take your recommendation. You didn't even ask me anything about if I even like meat. So if people don't feel understood, they're never going to trust you, even though you might have the greatest piece of steak, on the planet. And no matter what business you're in, no matter what you're selling, there's no transaction that happens before you actually have trust. So you're essentially in the business of trust as well. And core to being in the business of trust is making people feel understood or listening. And just like teaching, that is a skill that you're not born with, that you can learn to get better at. And you can practice it, in your personal life as well.
Was that something, the listening part for you, was that something that was a bit easier of a transition from teaching to sales because you kind of already had that kind of ingrained in you a little bit? Or was it more getting into the sales fire and it became in your mind like, oh yeah, like listening is a huge part of this, when you're first going?
It actually, I was not good at it. Meditation has helped me the most in it, because what meditation allows you to do is to not think about what you want to say next when someone else is talking. So we can go a little bit deeper into this if you'd like, but what meditation allows you to do is it allows you to be aware of your thoughts. So if someone's talking to you, a prospect or a significant other, what happens if you don't have meditation is you're automatically thinking about what you want to say. So you're not really listening to the other person. That's not your fault. It's just how we're wired. But what meditation does, and not the first time you do it, but after 3 or 4 months of meditating, what happens is you can be aware that you want to talk. And in that moment, you can choose not to. And you can draw your attention back to the other person.
Right.
And so that skill of drawing your attention back to the other person and being more curious is a level up and a good skill to have when you want to get better at listening. Just like if you're playing music, learning how to play a scale at a certain tempo with a certain accuracy is a precursor to learning how to be a fluent, and proficient musician. This idea of being aware of your thoughts, that you want to speak, that you want to cut someone off, that you want to convince, that moment of awareness, you can say, you know what, I think I don't want to say that right now. If you don't have meditation, what happens is you just talk. You just say what's ever on your mind. I'll give you an example. I was at the dog park a few months ago, and a lady walked up to me and she goes, "Where'd you get your dog?" And I said, "I got it from a breeder."
Yeah.
And she launches into this thing, "You're a terrible person. You should have adopted. They're like puppy mills." If you don't have meditation, you're going to start to bark back and defend your position.
Right.
But with meditation, I was able to just be aware that I was going to do that and just drop back and said, if more people adopted the dogs, fewer would be euthanized. And she just leaned forward and started to vent some more. And it didn't mean I had to agree with her. But that idea of like drawing people out more and understanding their perspective, even if you don't agree with it, you practice that in your personal life, it translates to a sales scenario as well. I give you an example. Like, someone said to me the other day, your price is too high, which is a common thing that someone might say. And if you don't have meditation and you don't know how to listen, you might say, well, I understand how you feel. Many people felt the same way, but you get what you pay for. And here's why we're better. But if you have meditation practice and you seek from a place of understanding, you can drop back and you can simply say something like this. Seems like you're comparing this to something else you've seen. This sounds way higher than you thought it was going to be. You thought this was going to be a zero less. Right. And so you're sort of drawing someone out to understand a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. That's really amazing. I mean, it's almost like in the meditation area, you're like still breaking, like you're in the moment, but you're breaking the fourth wall a little bit in terms of understanding in that moment. You're making that action. Like you said, you're leaning back and doing that. And I would imagine when you were really starting to listen better, when you're first getting in sales and you're doing this, I would imagine, like you did with the woman at the dog park, you were able to see right away that it made an impact on the person because they could tell you were listening, and they were probably expecting a totally different route that you were going to go down. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's a basic human need to feel heard and understood. And as you get better at it, and I'm by no means great at it, the ability to catch yourself in thought is better. Like depending on the topic, like, so if I said to my wife, I want to go to Japanese, and she goes, "Oh, I'm sick of going to Japanese. I don't want to go again." Sometimes I might think, geez, how could you not want to go to Japanese? And I might bark back in that moment, which I've done. But if you drop back and you say, it sounds like you're in the mood for something else. We've been going, like, if you can just catch the thought, that's what the meditation practice gives you. And the better at it you are, these people that have been doing it for 15, 20 years, they're always aware of their thoughts. Versus me, where I'm aware of them once in a while.
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. That's very valuable for someone to hear, because
Yes.
a lot of people out there that sell want to speed through number one. They want to fire through. They have their script and they're trying to stay anchored to it. But if you're not listening, like you said, and you're not aware of being able to give that person the step that they can take, it will be advantageous to you in the end. And like you talk about as well, let go of the outcome. Let go of that outcome and lean into what that moment is. Because if you're thinking about the outcome, you're not in the moment.
That's right. And it's okay to be thinking about it, because you can't control what you learn in meditation is you can't control the thoughts.
Yeah.
Like thoughts just come into your brain. Like I was on one of these podcasts that we were on just now live, and my mother-in-law lives up the street, and my door is open to my office. And sometimes she comes over and she just walks in and she'll just say, like, what are we doing for dinner? Or, how much money did you make last week? Now, normally I would be like, oh my gosh, like that, I would bark. But in the meditation, you're like, okay, she has a different way she was raised. Sure. She's thinking a different thing. She doesn't. So you might say you want to make sure your daughter's taken care of. You don't want her out on the streets. You want to make sure her husband's bringing home the bacon, and she'll just come and give a hug and she'll leave. So that's the superpower. It doesn't mean you agree with it,
Yep.
But it does mean that you're sort of, the default becomes, let me see where this other person's coming from first.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. You're putting them right there where they should be, in the spotlight, addressing it.
Yeah.
Now, cold outreach is something that a lot of folks have to do. It's kind of like that necessary thing, especially for growth, and there are different strategies. You talk specifically about taking a cold outreach and warming it up. So just give us a little insight into that.
Yeah. So let me give you the big thing with cold outreach is most people think it's their job to talk people into getting what they want. So a meeting or a sale. When you go into outreach with that intent, and that's your intent going in, what happens is subconsciously, and you might not be aware of it, you will behave in ways that feel pushy. You'll say things that feel pushy because your intent, your mindset affects how you behave.
Yeah.
So the first step in this is to certainly have a hypothesis about how you could potentially help, but to let go of this idea that everyone has this problem. And you're going in and you're testing to see if there's in fact a problem. I'll give you just an example of this, and then we can share some different examples.
Yeah.
Many moons ago, I was in the mall with my wife, and I did not need anything. She was returning some things. I was going to grab some dinner with her at True Food in the mall at Town Center. I just walked into a Fit to Run store, not needing anything. In fact, I just bought new sneakers like a month ago.
Yeah.
If the store associate said, "What brings you in today?" I would have said nothing. If she said, "Could I help you?" I would have said, "I'm just looking." If she said, "We got these new Brooks sneakers in, they're half off," I would have said, "I'm not interested," because she's pitching.
Right.
She didn't do any of those things. She looked down at my sneakers. She goes, "Are you a runner?" That's a question. And I said, "I am." She goes, "Training for any races?" That's another question.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Actually, yeah, I'm training for my first half marathon." And then she said this, "You've probably had a running gait test." Mm-hmm. And I said, "What is that?" And I have video of this that I show when I do workshops. A moment later, I'm on the treadmill and I'm running. She records it and she shows me the playback. She stills the image, and I can see by the playback that my ankles are overpronating. And she goes, "You notice how your ankles are overpronating when you run?" And I go, "Yes." So she goes, "Well, the problem is if you run in sneakers that are not made for pronated feet, you can get injured. You can get runner's knee and plantar fasciitis. If you'd like, I could look at your sneakers to see if they're made for pronated feet." And about 6 minutes later, I'm spending $180 on new sneakers and insoles. Now, what she did masterfully is poke the bear, right? So she warmed me up by not assuming that I had a problem. She asked a question to make me think, I'm not sure. And she shined a light on a problem I didn't know I had.
That's great.
Another example, I like to wash my car on the weekends. Mm-hmm. I get this unbelievable email from this company. I must have opted into something, and I'll never forget the sentence. It said, "How do you know that your sponge won't scratch your Audi S4?"
That's very.
I said, "What?" And I said, "What the what?" Like it knew I had an Audi, I guess. Yeah. So it turns out that if you wash your sponge car with a normal sponge and bucket, dirt can get trapped in the sponge and can scratch your car. And they sell this thing called a grit guard, which is this bucket with a little grate on the bottom, and you rub the sponge on the grate, and dirt settles to the bottom of the bucket and off your car. Another example of shining a light on a problem I didn't know I had. And that's the thing with cold outreach. No matter what you sell, the person has a bucket already or has sneakers already. So if you're selling another bucket or sneakers, you're going to hear, "I'm not interested," all day long. But if you ask a question in a neutral way that illuminates a potential problem, something interesting shifts. The prospect leans forward and goes, "What do you mean?"
Right.
Then you say, "Oh, you've probably had a running gait. Oh, you've probably heard of a grit guard. What's that?"
Yeah.
And now you've created an opening. One more example. I was down at a concert. I go to see Krabumkin. I can't remember the name of this band. It's a band down in Miami. And
what genre of music?
They're just like psychedelic rock.
Okay.
Someone's gonna know how to pronounce the name because I'm gonna get bashed on this. But when you go down to park in Miami, you either take an Uber or drive yourself. Now, if you take an Uber, they drop you off, then you got to find another Uber to come back home, or you take a private driver, that's expensive. If you drive by yourself, you got to get there super early and you got to leave early. Otherwise you're going to get, hammered in the parking lot. Yep. So imagine if I were to cold call you and say, "Hey, I know you're going down to Miami to see a concert. When you go parking, are you driving yourself, taking an Uber, or are you able to reserve a spot a block in advance away from the concert?" I would be like, "What is that third thing?"
Yeah.
"Oh, you've probably heard of Spot Hero. What's that?" right? And so now again, I've made you aware of a problem I didn't know I had. That's the way to warm people up when you're reaching out.
That's great. Those are three awesome examples, and it all has that same structure to it.
Yes.
You know, same structure, different kind of delivery, maybe a little different thing, but it's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and this works the same on a cold call. So like when I make a cold call to someone, I might start with, hey, John, my name is Josh Braun from LinkedIn. Does my name sound familiar, or is it completely random? And I will only contact people that are first degree connected with me, that have liked or commented on my post. So that's automatically like they're going to open up. And then I'll say, hey, I know that once you get to about 20 reps cold calling, it can be difficult for everyone to sort of say the same thing. Some people are ad-libbing, some people are working on a script. So you don't know like what's working. How have you been dealing with that? That's one of those questions of like, maybe there's a problem, maybe not. And if they're like, we got it covered, that's great too. I go to the next call. So without a problem, there's no need for your solution.
That's amazing. That's such great tangible advice. That's pretty awesome. Awesome is an East Coast word. I don't know if it's still used out here on the West Coast, but it originated in the East Coast.
Is that true? I thought it was Spicoli. Didn't he say totally awesome? Wasn't that?
I'll have to check on that. No, I'm kidding. You might have. Sorry, Sean. But let's talk about this. This is my favorite one. All right. Brings you right back to the teaching stuff. The tongue-tied objection flashcards. First of all, I love the tongue-tied thing, and I'm a big flashcard guy because flashcards, back in the day worked pretty well. So talk to me about how you came up with that.
So when I was a teacher, we would teach kids math tables. Right? And it turns out flashcards are a really good way of learning math multiplication tables. So in my workshops, what I would do would be 100 reps out in the audience, and I'd hold up a flashcard like this. I'd say, here's one right here. And everyone would shout out the answer. I do 4 times 2. Everyone would shout out 8. I would do, flashcards. But then I would hold this up, and everyone would be like, deer in the headlights. I'm like, what's the difference between 4 times 2 and this? Well, you've practiced 4 times 2 so many times that you know it's 8. But chances are you've not practiced this. So you're going to sound off balance. Just like, I know you're an actor. Before you can work on your tonality and how you want to present the lines, you have to know what to say when people ask you and put you on the spot. So these flashcards are an attempt to have a structure of what you're supposed to say and the psychology behind it so that you can make it your own. So someone says your price is too high. You might say, sounds like you saw this way less expensive somewhere else. So can you send me some information? Absolutely. It looks like you're looking for some specific information. Just so I don't do you a disservice, can I ask you a couple questions just so I don't send you irrelevant information? I'm not interested. That's okay. I know you didn't ask me to call you. Before I hang up, is it that this isn't relevant, or is my timing really off? The only reason I'm able to do that so fluently is I just practiced it, so these flashcards are a really low tech way to, just practice objections. So 32 of them, objection on the front, what to say on the back. And then I have audio files of the tonality and real cold calls of people using it in the wild.
Oh, that's amazing. That's like the, what have you seen the adoption rate on those things in terms of time too? Like somebody starts using them, how quick do they kind of get to know it? How quick do they get off book?
I don't have any visibility, but I have a bunch of testimonials on the site. I've sold like about $300,000 worth of them. They're $47 a pop. I got 5-star reviews, but I don't know like how long it takes people. They probably don't go through, if I had to guess, they don't probably go through all of them. There's probably like 7 or 8 that are like the ones they use a lot. So I'm not sure like how long it takes people to adopt it.
What a great idea, though. I haven't seen that anywhere else. That's pretty awesome.
I'm sure it exists.
Yeah, I mean, everything exists everywhere. I mean, we probably exist everywhere. There's another Josh Braun. There's another Rob Botts. They're out there.
There is.
Right now.
There's an AI version of us.
Oh, my God, there totally is. Okay, speaking of AI, you brought it up. I didn't bring it up. You brought it up. Okay. The AI effect in sales. Let's talk about it because guess what? It's here. So what's your take? Give it to me.
So this was this came up a couple of days ago. It's not really AI, but it's sort of related. Apple just released iOS 26, and they built into the operating system a AI that answers the call and asks what the call is about.
Mhm.
and it will transcribe what you said and pass that along to the person before they decide if they want to take the call. And of course, salespeople were freaking out. This is like the end of the world. It's the end of our profession. But I don't think that's the case with most AI.
Mhm.
I think with the case of the iOS 26, I think it's also an opportunity for people to be able to work on their message in a one sentence sort of way. So before I'd have to make sure I get someone on the phone and maybe they hang up on me, but now I actually have a chance of getting my message read, at least
Mhm.
the first sentence. So I
Sure.
think it makes us sharper.
Yeah.
I also think, a lot of the gloom and doom around it's going to end all these jobs. It's going to end SDRs and they're never going to make calls again. It's going to be all automated. I don't think that's going to be the case. There certainly are companies doing that,
Mhm.
but I think it just makes it a little less effective than
Mhm.
an actual person. I've not heard it as good. Maybe that changes in 10 years.
Yeah.
I think what is going to be perhaps replaced are the more mundane things like making these AI agents do some of the grunt work, like, hey, create me a list of people that are fit this criteria, verify the numbers and email addresses
Yeah.
so that I can, do my job a little bit better without having to do some of the more, task oriented work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy how from what we've seen on our side, how fast it's moving. Like we talked about before we got on today, how strategies and companies got to be pretty fleet of foot to make that adjustment in terms of what's happening with real time results happening right away. Everybody wants answers right now, right now, right now. And like you said, it's not there yet. Maybe someday it will be, but like you said, it makes you sharper. It's like, okay, what's missing here? Because it's kind of filtering into a lot of parts of the sales process, of that funnel. So it's interesting when it starts here with the BDRs, but when it gets to the actual closers, what does that look like? How dynamic is that conversation? How
It-
well does it listen?
It's
Yeah.
also great for helping you understand your audience.
Mhm.
It's really, really good at that. You can have a conversation around, what are these people currently using to get the job done?
Yeah.
Be specific. What potential roadblocks or problems are they running into? How do they describe the problem? I don't
Mhm.
understand this. Explain it to me like I'm 5. You
Yep.
also in the new Chat GPT 3 model have the ability to upload documents and videos. So
Mhm.
you could upload, let's say, 10 templates of your favorite influencers, and
Mhm.
then you can plug in and have a conversation with Chat GPT and use that input of the documents to help you sort of draft emails
Mhm.
around that. And you can use very specific language and prompts. I mean, it's really phenomenal
Mhm.
at iterating. The
Yes.
also the new model of image generation is also cool for getting attention. I think Dale Dupree was experimenting turning prospects into little action figures,
Mhm.
to sort of get attention. So there's all sorts of fun things to do with images as well. It's just a really fun playground to dabble in, I think.
Yeah, and like you said, it's an interesting time sharpening your skills, using it in the way that it's effective for you for what you do. It's kind of really the focus. What about you in the past calendar year? So we take just the past year. What's been the most effective sales strategy for you with the courses, going out and speaking? What's kind of what have you noticed that's worked pretty well for you?
LinkedIn. So
LinkedIn.
I pretty daily will write posts on LinkedIn related to sales and marketing. And those posts are like little salespeople that work 24/7.
Mhm.
And on my featured section is all the stuff that I offer, and I have a link to the site. So a percentage of people who read those posts will find their way to my website and maybe buy flashcards or some of the courses.
Mhm.
I also do a series with my wife called I Teach My Wife Sales on YouTube. And sometimes people will stumble across that. I've gotten a lot of inbound leads from people that will, see, my wife talking about something. And by the time I get on the call, it's very warm.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I do outreach, something that's worked really well for me is only calling people that I'm first degree connected with
Mhm.
that fit my ICP that have liked or commented on my posts. And so those calls are very, warm when I make them. And then also patience.
Mhm.
It takes a little bit of time to get the flywheel going,
Mhm.
to grow a following and to get the, people, liking and commenting, and to not worry too much about the algorithm, when to
Mhm.
post, how often to post, how many likes I'm going to get, just to write what you like to write about to the best of your ability and have a point of view and just, lean back and detach from all the other madness that you don't control.
What's kind of the biggest shift you've seen on LinkedIn? kind of over the years? Has it changed? Like, what's been the big change for you that you've noticed?
I think the biggest change has been way more content
Mhm.
and automated content and way more posts. I think there's just a lot more people now that have access to some of these tools that make it a little easier to write,
Yeah.
and also easier to comment. I also think that's a huge opportunity for people that are not using it like that
Yeah.
to stand out if you have you have a voice.
Well, it's funny because LinkedIn, when I first started, was almost just like the resume site. Just resumes everywhere. This is what everyone does. What's everyone doing? We're not really communicating, but this is what we all do.
Right.
Kind of standing around. It's pretty funny.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. What about this? This is a bigger question, but what have you learned most? I know it's kind of a little tougher of a question. You've been doing this for a long time. You know your stuff. You've done a lot of different strategies, but what's like a big takeaway that people watching this could be like, wow, that's a lesson learned right there. That's what you learned the most.
Yeah. So tell a quick story, and then I'll bring it back. I promise. Again, I was at the dog park story, another dog park story.
Hey, I love dogs. So go ahead.
I'm there a couple months ago, and some guy steps in dog poop, and he is irate. He is trying to find the person who didn't pick up after their dog,
Yeah.
and he's angry. He's like shouting at the top of his lungs, and the reason he's doing that is because he doesn't know the nature of a dog park, which is there's going to be poop there.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people don't pick it up. Sometimes they don't see it. That's just how it is. Just like sometimes when you go to an airport, planes are going to be delayed.
Yeah.
Just like in sales, there's going to be times when you do everything right and you don't get the sale.
Yeah.
There's going to be times when you mess up and you get the sale. Just like when you interview, you're going to have times when you knock it out of the park and you don't get the job. So this idea of moving in harmony with the nature of our profession, which is people will say they're going to do something and won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
People will ghost you.
Mm-hmm.
People will be rude sometimes when you cold call. Mm-hmm. And to just understand that, that's just how it is, versus there's something to change here, or I'm doing something wrong here. Mm-hmm. So sort of moving with it and observing it rather than getting caught up in it, I think is the thing that I've learned the most in sales. And it makes things just calm.
I think that's a big kind of flow that I've noticed with you, is that you're like in the good calm space, because one, with the flashcards, you get everything down, the script, everything, you're confident. Someone asks you that, the answer, but you're also present, like you said, which affects the mood of the sales and how the conversation goes. So I would say calmness is a big thing that I've noticed as far as just how you kind of approach it.
Yeah, you work on that. Yeah, and also this idea of detaching.
Mm-hmm.
I have found that the less you actually need the sale, the more sales you end up actually making.
Yeah, yeah. What the old, like, you struggle in the quicksand. What's the old expression? The more you sink, the more you struggle.
Yes. Yeah, you sort of want to just lean back and not get too excited and too, like anytime someone comes in and wants me to come and do a sales training, I'll say, hey, you guys have been in sales for like 15 years.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any top sellers? Wouldn't it make sense for them to like share what they're doing rather than bringing in some and if I can like easily talk someone out of it, mm-hmm. Good for me, like good for them. Like they don't need to do it, versus like, let me tell you why I need to come in and do this like right now. This is not like sales tactic. It's like what you're trying to do is do what's in the best interest of the other person.
Yeah.
Even if that doesn't involve you.
What's on the horizon for the rest of the year? Do you have any events coming up, or what's kind of going on? Or any new things coming out? Any new topics you're going to be talking about?
I have been learning, I don't know if you could see this on my wall here. Can you see? I've been learning those little things, the guitars and the piano and watercoloring. Those are the things I'm working on right now. I'm trying to expand my horizons beyond the sales profession. So I've been doing watercoloring, guitar, and piano.
That's amazing. It's amazing. We talked about the watercolors. I love the art stuff. But Ruben, the founder of Dub, Darius and Ruben, they're both the founders. Ruben's a big guitar aficionado.
Is he?
Plays music. He loves it. Yeah, you guys should totally talk. He loves music, play a guitar, all that good stuff.
What about you? Do you play?
No, I listen really well. I listen. Good listen.
But you're an actor. But do you do any other kind of arts, or is it just acting and
illustrating and the?
That's right, illustrating.
Yeah, cartoon stuff. So drawing, Drawing. It's funny. My stepdaughter says they say the word wrong. Drawing. I draw, I illustrate, and cartoon, and then the other creative stuff. But
So do you
music
notice when
is
you're doing that, when you're drawing, do you notice that you're like in this state where you're not thinking of anything else? Like your mind doesn't race when you're in that state?
I think it's more of like you mentioned before, thoughts come in, but then they go somewhere else. So if I'm thinking about a cartoon I want to do, what's the funny joke with it? Okay, what's the drawing I'm focusing on, but I'm still kind of thinking, okay, where is this going to go? Most of the time I have it mapped out, but it's almost like when you sit back and you watch a movie, like we talked about Jaws before we got on here, like a movie you love, you have it on the background. It's almost like slipping into a warm bath.
Mm.
You're there, you're thinking about other things, but they're not getting in your way. These other thoughts are not distracting me at all. They're almost just like friends hanging out with me as I'm doing my thing.
What is it about the arts that does that? I mean, I've noticed that even with, I'm just starting out on the guitar and the piano and the watercoloring, but I've noticed like, wow, I just lost track of like 2 hours.
I think it just gets you into where maybe it's in the subconscious, but you know, like, well, you know, when you're really excited about something, you're like, oh man, I'm really excited about that. And then you get there and it feels like time just goes so quickly. When you're in those moments, I feel like, and athletes talk about this too. I think Michael Jordan was talking about this, where time slows down. Like a lot of, like, it feels like it just slows down. And I feel like anytime me personally, I'm drawing or I'm doing something creative, I don't know. It feels like it's a long time because I'm in that moment. It just feels like I'm there. It's like time has stopped. And maybe that's what relaxes the brain about it. You don't feel like you're rushed. You don't feel like no one's tapping you on the shoulder. You're really in that moment. You
Yeah,
know?
there's something very satisfying about doing the work and getting better at it versus like draw something in this style using AI. Like as an illustrator, like how do you feel about that? Like that would probably be.
It's interesting. I think Ruben and I talk about this a lot. So if you think about um, if someone had my hands tied, said, Rob, you can no longer physically draw anything. You've got to think of something in your brain, and then you've got to be so good at prompting that you've got to be the best creative prompter there is. So if I wanted to create that Jaws cartoon, I'd have to say, okay, type in my thoughts. Bruce is a mechanical shark. He's got big jowls on the side. His teeth are overextended. He's got really big eyeballs. He's hulking and large and huge. He's going to be at the bottom of the screen. The ocean's going to be at the top. The light is coming through the water. Like all of that is very creative. It's just in a different creative way where I'm used to enjoying this and thinking and doing it, where I'd have to be forced to enjoy the creative and let it appear there. It's different. Still creative. It's just very different.
So let me get your take on this. So let's say someone was competing in an art contest and they prompted a image.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that still considered to be worthy of like competing with someone who didn't do that? Like,
like someone did a prompt and they said, okay, the rules are there has to be an oil painting.
yes.
It can't be in the style of anyone else. It's got to be your own creative style.
Yes.
I'm not too sure with AI in terms of what it picks up out there and what it kind of pulls and doesn't pull. You could probably do that in the prompt. There would have to be strict prompt rules. There obviously wouldn't be there would be what's the size of the canvas, because I think to make it equal, you'd have to have them both printed out, both on a wall, whatever the rules were as far as that. Time frame wouldn't matter because it's going to be done in minutes. You know what I mean? Well, depending on the prompt. So with oil painting, see, there are some rules, because with oil painting, unless it's digital, like you're on an iPad and you're digitally oil painting, you can do layers and it's a little easier. With physical oil painting, there's drying, there's turpentine, there's so many factors. So I think there'd be a lot to work out in terms of the rules.
But the digital art contest, if someone were to prompt it, is that a legit? Do you consider them an artist?
Maybe it's a different definition. Maybe sort of. I don't know. Like, because I think, like, again, if you're thinking about what's my visual and I'm creating in my mind and boom, it pops out like a 3D printer, you still have to control.
Right. That's art. That's art.
Like, where is it placed?
That's art. And the shadowing, like if you got real deep into it, like that's still art, isn't it?
Yes, agreed. It's just a different kind. So I don't know if it's a different category. I don't know if it's like, artists that physically do the stuff. Okay, they're over here. Artists that are still just using their brain and prompting, that's over here. Because you're still using your brain when you're drawing. It's just you're doing it in a different manner. So
yeah, it's interesting conversation.
They're all great questions, man. I mean, they're all like, I don't even have the answers. They're all like, I think we're all learning as we're doing this. But to answer your question, in my opinion, yes, it's still art. It still takes creatives. Unless you're just saying, give me a Gary Larson cartoon in the style of Gary Larson. That's about, I don't know. That's
right. I agree. I agree.
Josh, it's been great, man. Any last words for everybody out there? What do you got? I
appreciate you having me on. This was fun. And I even enjoyed our pre-live conversation. That was even fun as well. So
yeah, sorry you guys missed that, but it was really good. Well, Josh, listen, thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. And, look forward to what you're going to be doing. The teaching sales thing, I love. I think that's an awesome combo.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you next episode. See ya.